All right, Jimmy Ott and Paul Stone talking college basketball on this Valentine's Day. Busy, busy slate on this Saturday, February 14th. Let's start off in the SEC, Paul, and go to A&M and Vanderbilt. One of the big stories in the SEC has been Buckyball, first-year coach out of Sanford, and boy, their extreme pressing style that has caught a lot of teams off guard. You wonder if they hit a little bit of a wall here, but they were. They were 7-1 in the league. Now 7-4 after losing three in a row, including two at home, and this week at home to Missouri as a sizable favorite in that one. Vanderbilt, on the other hand, they were one of the last undefeated teams in college basketball. They got beat. They lost three in a row. Now they've won 4 of 5. A couple of 7-4 teams. Nashville, this line is projected at 8.5. The Commodores' favorite, Paul.
Yeah, I tell you, Jimmy, Texas A&M, they had won 10 of 11 games approaching the end of January. They were really shaping up, in my opinion, to be a team that no one would want to face come March Madness. But then the calendar turned to February, and now the Aggies, they've lost 3 straight. That's not, that's not ideal. But the SEC is a difficult conference. You're going to lose some basketball games playing in this league. But they've lost 3 straight. First of all, they fell at Alabama, lost that game 100-97 there in Tuscaloosa. Then they lost at home this past Saturday by 19 to a very talented Florida team, lost to the Gators 86-67. Then last night, Wednesday, February 11th, they fall by 1 at home in College Station to Missouri, 86-85. The Aggies closed as a 6.5-point favorite in that game, I believe. I'm undeterred, though. I still like the Aggies. I still think this is a team to watch come March. This is an A&M team that has flourished in its first season of Buckyball, that in-your-face, press at every turn, up-tempo style of basketball employed by first-year head coach Bucky McMillan. As is often the case, talking about the tournament still, as is often the case come tournament time, it could come down to matchups. But I think the Aggies are a team that have a real shot to advance past the first weekend of the tournament. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them make the Sweet 16. Talking about Vanderbilt, they came out of the gate smoking, got off to a 16-0 start. They were ranked as high as number 8 in the coaches poll, but they've cooled a bit. You did mention they played well in their recent games, but they're 4-4 across their last 8. This is an A&M team. They have thrived as an underdog this year. They are 6-1 against the spread overall as an underdog, but 6-0 against the spread as an underdog away from their home floor. I'll take the Aggies as low as +7. I think they're going to keep it close against the Commodores. Wouldn't be surprised to see them come out of Nashville with an outright victory.
Get a $10 bonus bet to use on college basketball with this special giveaway from Bet Rivers and College Sports Rush. Go to your Bet Rivers app and enter the bonus code CSR22 to get a $10 bonus bet to use on any college basketball game. That code again is CSR22 for College Sports Rush. CSR22. Offer ends on February 15th. Must be 21. Eligible players only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLE. Let's go to the Big 12. And these situational spots are kind of coming to really playing into form right now. Kansas, boy, the good and the bad of college basketball. The elite talent kind of picking his spots. Load management. He's getting ready for the NBA is Peterson. He decides with flu-like symptoms to sit out, or his agent does. And what a better place to be with the flu than an arena 16,000 plus. But anyway, Kansas emotional hangover after that emotional win. First time at Fog Allen. Now, they've beaten the number 1 team before, but not in that building. First time that they won against a number 1 team in Fog Allen. Kansas, and also this is some emotional hangover for Kansas, but also for Iowa State. Iowa State was looking to this game a little bit past TCU. They led by 8 with less than 8 minutes to go in Fort Worth against TCU and lose that one as 7.5-point favorites. They went into Fog Allen earlier this year undefeated and got drilled. I mean, was down double digits out the gate. Gate to wire, 84-63 loss against the Jayhawks. So now they come back home. Kansas, an emotional hangover spot. We've seen that those teams have their struggles. And Iowa State, now the line is a little bit higher than we like. We're projected to be at 6.5. I like the Cyclones here situationally, minus the points at home. This game that they were looking past the Horned Frogs for against Kansas, who comes in with that emotional hangover, Paul.
Yeah, you mentioned the projected number, maybe a tad higher than we would like ideally, but there's just so much in this spot, in my opinion, as well as yours, to like situationally about this spot for Iowa State. First of all, you talked about the first meeting. Kansas blasted then second ranked Iowa State by 21 points back on January 13th there at Allen Fieldhouse. Secondly, you also mentioned Kansas obviously off the huge Big Monday victory over Arizona this past Monday, 82-78. And you also pointed out Darren Peterson, the Jayhawks star, true freshman, did not play in that game after complaining of flu-like symptoms. And then also a day later, this past Tuesday, Iowa State goes to Fort Worth. They get ambushed by the Horned Frogs, 62-55. This is a Kansas team that like most teams, I mean, they're at their best on their home floor. They're coming off a huge victory. They've already lost Big 12 road games at both UCF and West Virginia. Hilton Coliseum's a more difficult place to do business for visitors than those two places. I think it's perhaps the most underrated home court advantage in all of college basketball. People who follow the sport closely know this, but Iowa State's college basketball fans are second to none. They are big-time lovers of the sport. I think Hilton Coliseum is going to be rocking. I think Kansas might still have a little of the afterglow of that victory over Arizona. Don't want to lay probably more than 7 here, but I like what you're doing. I think Iowa State's going to beat Kansas on Saturday in Ames.
And it's the results say it, just not just a pat on the back for for the fans there, but the top five results. Home, strongest home court advantage in Ames over the last 10 years. Let's go to the ACC, and we're talking about situational hangovers, huh? Well, how about North Carolina? Did you see the court rush at the Dean Dome on Saturday night after they beat Duke, and then they go into Miami as a 1.5 point favorite and lose to the Hurricanes. Hurricanes on the bubble, so an important win for them. What do? They rush the court. So court rush fade here in effect for NC State. NC State coming off of a low point. Will Wade, his worst loss as a Power 5 coach. Now, he had a similar loss and a worse loss when in his early days of coaching at Chattanooga, but a 41-point loss at the Yum Center in Louisville during the week this week. So last time they had a low point, they lost as a 14.5-point favorite against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They responded with a 6-game winning streak. Maybe a spot to rebound. Probably so here. So the Wolfpack here, 5.5-point favorites this Saturday. They're 9-3 in the league. Miami now 8-3. Another situational spot here against the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I tell you, when we get late in the season, I think these situational spots really become attractive to discerning sports bettors. I think we get as sports bettors, we get so caught up in recency biased, what we just saw, and maybe sometimes tend to neglect to give the previous, at this point, 25 or so games their proper due. So you do have a North Carolina State team coming off that 41-point shellacking at Louisville. Will Wade obviously not in a great mood the last couple of days. In his post-game press conference, he called his club's performance, quote, embarrassing, end quote, adding that the Wolfpack, quote, got slaughtered, end quote. Pretty obvious adjectives that he used there, but just to kind of highlight the fact that this is a situation where you would expect NC State to come out swinging. You talked about the Miami victory on Tuesday, February 10th. Miami takes care of 11th ranked North Carolina 75-66, and many of the crowd in attendance, the announced crowd of a little over 7,300, they stormed the floor, joined the Hurricanes in the post-game celebration, something we also love to see for these ensuing games. So you've got an NC State team off that humiliating 41-point loss, hosting a Miami squad off inarguably its biggest victory of the 2025-26 season to date. So what am I going to recommend in this one? Well, obviously, I'm going to recommend taking the beaten and battered Wolfpack, projected 5.5-point home favorite over that Miami team that could still be riding high in the aftermath of the victory over North Carolina, might still be a little bit intoxicated from that win. They got beat obviously by 41, but they had played again 24 prior games to that 41-point shellacking, and they had won 6 straight entering that game at Louisville, and that included road victories at both Clemson and SMU. So I think NC State's going to come out. They're going to back up their worst performance of the season with one of their best. I like NC State up to about -6.5 over Miami, Florida on Saturday.
All right, we're projecting that line to be at 5.5 on Saturday. The Wolfpack against the Hurricanes. Last year's SEC season was historic. It was the highest rated season for a conference in the history of college basketball. 14 of the 16 went to the NCAA tournament. Nowhere to go but down. But I'm a little surprised how down it's gone. So third behind the Big 12 and the Big 10. Boy, the Big 10 games have been awesome this week, man. You've had some really good ones. Nebraska come back, near comeback earlier in the week in overtime against Purdue and some others. Wisconsin going on the road after they got hosed in Bloomington to win another game. They've got wins in Ann Arbor, in Champaign. I mean, unreal. So there's a lot of teams that are off their level from last year. And the team that had the highest bar set for the national championship was Florida. I think that's the only team that has a similar level. I think they might be as good as they were last year, even after a 5-4 start, championship hangover, brutal schedule, and they had their new pieces they had to try and figure out. But they are killing people right now, and you just wonder with a team like this who knows they're going to get in, who doesn't care too much about their seeding. They've got enough confidence in their strength of their team. What gets them excited to play? Well, how about a war of words between the young coach Golden and Nate Oates with Bediako in the interesting situation there. Bediako's gone down now. How about that? The leadership from Greg Sankey. He kind of made it known to the judge in Tuscaloosa his thoughts and that he just should not be playing. And the judge followed his lead there and ruled him ineligible. So they were in gold and says, "Well, we're gonna beat him if he plays or not." And they beat him badly on that Sunday, that high-profile game on ABC in a light Sunday schedule. Then they go to College Station. Texas A&M is on top of the SEC standings, so they're excited to play them. Suffocated them with their defense and just destroyed them in College Station. They go to Athens. Well, what's the motivation there? Well, they lost in Athens last year. They fell behind by 26 before they rallied and then lost late in Athens. So how are they going to be motivated this year? They're in the SEC. Everybody's motivated to play Big Blue. I don't care what kind of team Kentucky has. And I think Pope has done a nice job midseason of kind of getting his piece. Major disappointment for Big Blue in Lexington this year, but they are playing better as of late. But they're going into a buzzsaw. Florida is not looking to take Kentucky lightly. They want to beat them as badly as they are. I'm looking at a projected double-digit line, maybe 10.5 is what we're looking at. But this is still, you got the attention of a team that is peaking, that is much better at home. And the Rowdy Reptiles, they smell blood in the air. They want to beat the Blue Cats as bad as they can. I'm taking the Gators here, minus a 10.5 projected, Paul.
Yeah, I like where you're coming from there. It's just hard not to be bullish on the defending national champion Florida Gators when they're hitting on all cylinders, and they certainly have been over the last 4 games. I just don't think they take a backseat to anyone at this point in college basketball this season. That includes top-ranked Arizona. I mean, I think Florida at their best is every bit as good as Arizona at its best. They've rolled, has Florida, their last 4 SEC opponents to the tune of an average of 27.3 points per game. Their last 4, 3 of those opponents, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Georgia, 3 teams that are all projected presently to be in the NCAA tournament. South Carolina was the 4th team. They beat them by over 40 points to account for a big part of that 27.3. But like you said, they're just thrashing people. Of their 9 SEC victories, Florida's defeated 8 of those teams by 15 points or more. You look at this Kentucky team, and they got off to that 9-6 start, 0-2 in SEC play, really kind of stumbled out of the gate, but they've now won 8 of their last 9 games. And it seems almost odd to say, but as kind of ho-hum as the season's been to this point overall for Kentucky, they're only 1 game behind Florida. So they could be tied with Florida in the SEC, atop the SEC standings after Saturday's game. But I don't think that's going to come to fruition. This is a big blue team that's going to get the best punch from Florida. And it's also a big blue team that on the road lost by 15 at Alabama earlier this year, lost by 25 at Vanderbilt. They're not in Florida's class when Florida brings their A game. And I think Big Blue's going to get the best out of Florida. I think the Gators going to roll as well here in Gainesville on Saturday.
All right, Paul, let's stay in the SEC game that you're looking at. And boy, has there been a tougher luck team than Porter Moser's Oklahoma Sooners this year, especially that game at Columbia, Missouri, with Missouri hitting threes at the end of regulation and overtime to go to overtime and then lose by 1 there. Georgia, you wonder if how they get up off the deck here against after that Florida beating. You talked about Florida, their last 4 by combined 109 points. But the SEC, Georgia started out 4-2 in the league and comfortable, a nice cushion for a bid for the NCAA tournament. And maybe they were catching teams off guard with their extreme style of play. They were going 11 deep with their rotation, so they were playing really, really fast. One of the fastest teams, not the fastest team in college basketball at one point, and the highest scoring team in college basketball per average at one point. But then they're 5-6. They have lost they have lost 4 out of 5, and you just wonder if teams are more prepared to play with their extreme style of play. Oklahoma is only 2-9. They're tied for last, but they are better than that with some of those brutal losses this year. Oklahoma could be a slight dog here at home in Norman Saturday, Paul.
Yeah, last night I faded Georgia at home against Florida, got a winner there, and going to go back to the well here on Saturday with Oklahoma hosting the Bulldogs there in Norman. You know, it seems like every week on the podcast we're talking about Georgia and their hot start. They were 13-1, ranked 18th nationally after the first week in January. The Bulldogs in the preseason media poll, they were picked to finish 14th in the conference, in the 16-team SEC. But I think maybe some people overstated their early season success. They played a quite manageable non-conference schedule, and that's putting it nicely. They only played 1 game in non-conference where they were the betting underdog, and they were only getting 1.5 at Florida State. So they were favored in every game but 1 in non-conference. So it's not like they were playing the best and the brightest in college basketball and pulling off upset victories. But they did open SEC play, got the victory over Auburn there in overtime. But since that victory over Auburn in the SEC opener, the Bulldogs only 4-5 in conference in their last 9 games. Joe Lunardi currently projects Georgia to be one of the last 4 teams getting a bye, meaning they wouldn't have to play in any of those first 4 Tuesday, Wednesday games. But I don't think the Bulldogs going to end up, if I had to guess right now, and I could take even money, I'd say they're not going to make the tournament. I just think
Okay.
And the SEC is going to get, they're going to probably get 10 teams. And Georgia, if they're that, one of the best 10 teams, they probably will. I probably should say maybe it's even money. I just think they got to stop the bleeding. They seem to be, falling fast. Similar to Georgia, Oklahoma, they got out of the gate nicely. They had some nice non-conference victories, some real close games against some quality opposition. They were 11-3 the first weekend in January, and they had lost 9 in a row going into this past Saturday, February 7th, when they went into Vanderbilt. Had a pretty nice lead, but had to hold on, and they barely hung on. Beat the Commodores 92-91 there in Nashville. But still, they are currently in a 3-way tie for last at 2-9. But I think they're going to make it 2 in a row. I think they're going to get past a Georgia team that I think has seen its best days in the 2025-26 season. Oklahoma, we project them to be getting 1.5. Sometimes these games inside of 2 points can cross zero. The home team especially can take money. So I'll recommend Oklahoma. They could close as a favorite. I'm going to recommend the Sooners up to -1.5 over Georgia Saturday in Norman.
We don't reference the NET a whole lot because it has very little to do with handicapping, but it has a lot to do with the selection process for the committee. And Georgia right now at their NET, and that's the metric that they really lean on heavily, is at 35. So if they continue to slide, they'll be in the 40s. And when you get into the 40s, and you are in bubble range for the selection committee. So we'll keep an eye on that one. And on the same side, as far as that goes, Missouri with a nice win on the road. They still have some work to do as far as their NET metric is concerned. Let's go to the Big East. We'll talk about metrics. We talk about power ratings, and Ken Palm is the most respected out there in college basketball. And a lot of odds makers lean on it heavily and use it as basically a starting point to kind of develop some of these lines. And part of public consumption with the betting is history, and it takes some of that history into account, and sometimes you can find some flaws there a little bit. And I think, as far as historically, one of the teams that is performing below, way below there in all of the 365 team field in college basketball, is that little Jesuit school in Omaha, Nebraska. That's right, the Creighton Blue Jays. Coach McDermott has been to the NCAA tournament 12 times at Omaha, 12 times at Creighton, including a run of a 4-year run where he won 7 games, got to the Elite Eight, lost a tough one to San Diego State. Well, that came down to a call at the end, a couple of Sweet 16s, and a first round win in that 4-year run. He also went to the tournament 3 times when he was a coach at Northern Iowa in the Missouri Valley Conference. But this Creighton team, you just wonder if the new roster building with the money, the player salary that you have is caught up with the small private school in Omaha, Nebraska, because they are way below. They're not going to the tournament this year. They're 13-12 overall, 7-7, straight up 500 in league play. And now there are whispers about turning it over to a coach in waiting in Omaha as well. So a lot of signs for the Blue Jays. They've just been so good for so long there, but it's a new era of roster building in college athletics. Nova, on the other hand, is 10-3 and on the road here, favored by 4.5. And so it's unusual to see that Creighton is catching that much. They sell out every game. They are unbelievable fan support in Omaha. But Kansas is still, Creighton has still lost 4 out of 5. So I got to tell you, man, I just think you're still getting honest lines against the Blue Jays here. Give me Nova as a rare road favorite here in Omaha against Creighton. We're projecting it to be around 4.5 points.
Yeah, a lot of the talk, Jimmy, in the Big East this season is certainly, and rightfully so, centered around UConn and St. John's. But Villanova at 19-5 on the season, they are somewhat quietly trending towards what ultimately is probably going to be a 25-win season under first-year head coach Kevin Willard. Willard, obviously, previously at the University of Maryland prior to coming to Villanova. You look at the Wildcats' 5 losses this season. They have been to BYU, 4 of those losses to BYU, Michigan, St. John's, and UConn. So some pretty good company there. Their 5th loss came a little over a month ago to this same Creighton team, and actually came in Philadelphia on Villanova's home court. Villanova lost that game 76-72 as a 5.5-point home favorite. You look at this Villanova team, they've performed well versus market expectations this year. They are 16-8 against the spread overall, and covered 5 of their last 6 games, so playing well at the present. Creighton, meanwhile, they have dropped 4 of their last 5 games straight up, and they have failed to cover 9 straight games. So they are really on a downward spiral right now. Lost last night on Wednesday night at DePaul, 72-71. Creighton closed as a small favorite in that game. You got 2 teams going in different directions here. I think you've got a good ticket there on Villanova on the road in Omaha.
Yeah, you talk about the Wildcats are in good position to go to the tournament. That would be the third different program that Kevin Willard has taken to the tournament. Of course, you mentioned Maryland, but also Seton Hall. And well, it's probably one of those things, kind of like Dayton that year. That may have been his best team that he had, which was going to the 2020 tournament that was canceled by COVID. So Willard doing a nice job with the Nova, low 30s with their NET. So they're comfortably in right now. Paul, let's go to the Southland Conference and look at the McNeese State Cowboys. And Will Wade got this team to the tournament the last 2 years. They won the Southland. They hosted it. They're hosting it again and again. So he handpicked his successor, Bill Armstrong, as the head coach there. And then they have lost twice, home and away, to Stephen F. Austin. So Stephen F. Austin has a 2-game lead over the Cowboys of McNeese State in the Southland standings. But they will have to go to Lake Charles and beat McNeese State on their home floor if they get that automatic bid. McNeese travels to East Texas A&M. Double-digit favorite here. What you looking at the McNeese State Cowboys here?
Yeah, McNeese actually has the conference Southland Conference tournament there in Lake Charles, Louisiana through 2029. So it's going to be tough for any team in that league to get the automatic bid that the league has into the NCAA tournament. Saturday's game between McNeese and East Texas A&M represents the second meeting of the year between these schools. And in the first meeting back on December 12th, a long time ago, 2 months ago in Lake Charles, two-time defending league champion McNeese State led by 30 points at the half, just blew them out early en route to a lopsided 102-66 victory over the Lions. In that game, the Cowboys, they shot lights out. They were 35 of 63 from the field overall, so 56% from the field, and 13 of 24 on three-point attempts. So they were 54% from beyond the arc. And now McNeese, they get to make the return trip, go to Commerce, Texas to play East Texas A&M on Saturday. We project McNeese to be a 12.5-point road favorite in that game. But there are a few things that stand out in this game to me from the perspective of taking East Texas A&M as a double-digit home underdog. First of all, not surprisingly, like most teams, McNeese is a much better shooting team on its home floor than away. The Cowboys are shooting 50% on the year on their home floor and just 42.6% on the road. Also, McNeese, even though they were 13 of 24 on their home floor against East Texas A&M in the first meeting, they are not a great three-point shooting team. They're probably not going to make 13 three-pointers again on Saturday. In fact, McNeese ranks in three-point shooting percentage. They rank 288th out of 365 Division I teams. They only hit 31.7% of their attempts from beyond the arc. So they're likely going to take a step back in terms of their three-point performance the second time around against East Texas A&M, largely in part because of their inferior shooting on the road. They are not have not been this year a strong away favorite. Talking about McNeese, the Cowboys only 1-5 against the spread this season as a conference road favorite. And we've talked about it some on this podcast. We have faded McNeese in similar spots this year. Meanwhile, East Texas A&M, they're not a great basketball team. They are headed towards their third straight second division finish in the Southland Conference. But the Lions, they have certainly, shown some spark. I think in recent games, they've covered their last 3 games. They've won 2 of 3 outright. 12.5 points again is the projected line here. That's a lot of points. I like East Texas A&M. I would take it up to about 11.5 over McNeese.
All right, the final pick, and let's go to Marquette and Xavier in the Big East. We're talking about these emotional situations. Well, yes, you can lose an emotional game as well, and that's what the Battle of Patinos were on Monday night, as Xavier really played one of their better games and gave St. John's all they could handle. Now, of course, St. John's coming off of their emotional win on Friday night against UConn. Rick Pitino kind of having some fun with the media, saying, "I got a 5 a.m. Curfew. I'm going out all night," and stuff like that, and told the players. Well, it looked like it, but little Pitino, Richard Pitino's Musketeers really played hard, and it was just, you could just see the effort was a little bit special for them that night. As far as Marquette goes, Shaka Smart in his fifth season in Milwaukee started off. This is one of his worst teams he's ever had, even going back to Texas and VCU. Started off 2-8 in the league, and it really had a lot of people looking at his approach in roster building. Shaka Smart has not taken a transfer since his first spring when he got hired in Milwaukee to take on the Marquette program. But the last four games, they are playing better. Won by 24 against Creighton. They lost by 5 at Seton Hall. Tough spot there. They beat Butler by double digits, 70-55. And then the last game in Philadelphia at Villanova, probably should have won the game, but they lose late by 3 to Villanova. Had the lead with under a minute to go in that one. So his roster building approach over transfer, using a transfer portal, that's highly questionable right now. But it does seem like this team is improving. So teams that are playing above their level right now. Another one of those teams. Look at first year coach up at College Park, Maryland, right now in Buzz Williams. They've won their last two as double-digit underdogs against Minnesota, and then last night against Iowa. So I think Marquette is playing way above their level right now. Xavier, even in a loss, an emotional loss, I'm going to take a Marquette plus 3.5 in Cincinnati in against Xavier.
I don't have the numbers right in front of me, Jimmy, but Biggie, you're talking about the close call that Xavier had at St. John's earlier this week. Big East underdogs are performing very well this year against the spread, and double-digit Big East underdogs. I mean, like a week or so ago, they were something like 10-1 or 10-2. So the big underdogs in the Big East on the road are doing quite well. This figures to be this game between Marquette and Xavier figures to be only the third time that Xavier has been favored in a Big East game all season long. The Musketeers failed to cover in the previous two instances. And then you mentioned the valiant effort that came up short, 87-82 at St. John's on Monday. Xavier now, after that loss, have lost 5 of their last 6 games. In these teams' first meeting at home for Marquette, Marquette eked out a 66-65 victory as a 4.5-point home favorite. So they failed to get the money in that one. It's certainly been a trying season, as you pointed out, for Shaka Smart and the Golden Eagles. Been a tough year. But unlike Xavier, I think they are somewhat at least trending in the right direction. They've gone 3-3 in their last 6 games. They've covered 4 straight. Marquette hasn't quit. They're still battling. And as of recently, they've certainly been getting better results, as you also pointed out. I think you're on the right side here. I think they might not win, but I think they're going to keep it close and battle to the end.
All right, we do it every Tuesday and Thursday here on College Sports Rush, a YouTube channel, all the way through the Final Four. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott on the College Sports Rush YouTube channel, brought to you by our friends at Bet Rivers.